First, the girl's eyes were blindfolded. In the midst of their conversation, her hands and feet were chained. Despite all this, she felt completely comfortable because the person doing this to her was none other than her childhood friend. But within moments, the situation took a dark turn. The girl started to feel pain as her friend took out a blade and began to cut into her skin. She screamed and cried for help, but there was nothing she could do. Her eyes were covered, and her hands and feet were bound in chains. Suddenly, her childhood friend poured petrol on her and set her on fire before fleeing the scene. So friends, today we're discussing a chilling crime case that occurred just 2 months ago. In this case, the victim and the killer were not strangers, but childhood friends. The question is, what could have happened between them that led to such a horrifying outcome, despite their years of friendship? Let's go back to the beginning to uncover the dark truth behind this story. December 23rd, 2023. This was the day when Nandini suddenly received a call from her childhood friend, Vaith Maran. He told her that he had planned a surprise for her, as her birthday was the next day, December 24th. Let me tell you, before this conversation, there had been a major argument between them. As a result, they had not been in touch for a long time. What caused that argument? You'll find out as the story unfolds, and that argument plays a key role in this murder. Nandini and Vaith Maran were once good friends, which is why when she received his call, she couldn't ignore it. She answered. The first thing Vaith Maran did was apologize for their previous argument, and then he told Nandini that he had planned a surprise for her. Excited by the idea of a surprise, Nandini immediately agreed to meet him, still unaware of what lay ahead. But before we dive deeper into this story, we need to understand their past. Nandini and Vaith Maran were both from Madurai, Tamil Nadu. They grew up together and studied in the same school. However, their group wasn't just the two of them. There were 3 girls in total. Remember this detail, as it's crucial to understanding the story. Before becoming Vaith Maran, he was known as Pandi Maheshwari, meaning Vaith Maran used to be a girl. Yes, you heard that right. So, whenever I mention Pandi Maheshwari, I'm referring to Vaith Maran's past. The 3 of them, Nandini, Pandi Maheshwari, and their third friend, were inseparable since childhood, attending school together from 1st grade until 12th grade. Naturally, their bond deepened over the years. However, after graduating from high school, they had different goals. Each one chose a different path, enrolling in colleges located in different cities. But before they parted ways, they made a promise to stay in touch, no matter where life took them. They kept that promise for a while. And then, one day, Pandi Maheshwari called her 2 friends. Vaith Maran shared something deeply personal, something he had kept hidden inside for years, out of fear of society and his parents. He had never told anyone before, but the time had come. He finally confessed to his friends that he was not comfortable in his female body. He felt more like a boy and wanted to transition, to change his gender from female to male. This revelation was too much for the 3rd member of their group. Feeling uncomfortable with the whole situation, she decided to leave the group. She couldn't accept the fact that her friend was about to become a man. Nandini, however, chose to stay by Vaith Maran's side. Even Vaith Maran's parents were against his decision, refusing to accept it. Society, too, struggled to come to terms with such things, whether it's same-gender marriage or gender transition. It's worth mentioning that undergoing a gender transition isn't an easy task. It requires a lot of money. Pandi Maheshwari, Vaith Maran's former identity, worked tirelessly to save up for the procedure. After years of hard work, he finally had the money to undergo the surgery. Throughout this difficult period, no one stood by him, except for Nandini. She was there when he needed support the most. After the surgery, Pandi Maheshwari became Vaith Maran. During his recovery, Vaith Maran had many conversations with Nandini. He expressed how relieved and happy he felt. He had always felt trapped in his previous body, but now, as a man, he felt liberated. He shared his thoughts, emotions, and fears with her, because at that time, she was the only one by his side. After the surgery, both of them returned to their normal lives, each focusing on their respective careers in different cities. Years passed, and life moved on. Years later, Vaith Maran relocated to Chennai. When Vaith Maran moved to Chennai, Nandini also relocated to the city to stay with her uncle, as she had secured a private job in the IT sector. Coincidentally, she ended up working in the same company where Vaith Maran had just started. When they both discovered this, they were thrilled. Nandini was excited, thinking they would reconnect as childhood friends and work together once again. But little did she know, Vaith Maran had different plans in mind. Now, we return to the point in time that we mentioned earlier, December 23rd, 2023. This was the day Vaith Maran called Nandini and mentioned a surprise for her. Nandini got ready and left to meet him. Their day started with a visit to a temple. After the temple, they went shopping, and later they visited an orphanage to donate. By the time they finished, evening had set in, and darkness was beginning to fall. Vaith Maran then said, "Let me drop you off at your house on my bike." Nandini agreed and hopped on, trusting her childhood friend completely. They rode for quite a distance until Vaith Maran stopped the bike in a desolate, abandoned area where there was no one around. The plot was eerily quiet and deserted. He turned to Nandini and said, "Your final surprise is still waiting." Nandini, being innocent and trusting, smiled and asked, "What is it?" Vaith Maran replied, "I can't give you a surprise just like that. First, I'll blindfold you." Now we all know that surprises often involve blindfolds, and Nandini didn't think twice about it. She let him cover her eyes. But what came next was strange. How did Vaith Maran convince her to let him bind her hands and feet with chains? Did Nandini not feel any doubt at all? Did she not question why, in such an isolated place, he was tying her up? This is what we call blind trust, and it was this trust that Nandini had in Vaith Maran. Once she was blindfolded with her hands and feet chained, the gruesome game began. Vaith Maran pulled out a blade, and Vaith Maran began inflicting pain. He started cutting Nandini's body in several places, causing unbearable agony. But what could she do? Her eyes were blindfolded, her hands and feet were chained, and there was no one around. She could only scream, but there was no one nearby to hear her cries for help. Then, in a horrifying turn, Vaith Maran poured petrol on Nandini and set her on fire. Sometime later, two people happened to pass by the desolate area and noticed smoke rising in the distance. Suspicious of the smoke coming from such an abandoned place, they rushed over. What they saw was shocking. A girl, Nandini, engulfed in flames before their eyes. They hurriedly tried to extinguish the fire on her body, but by then it was too late. Nandini was severely burned. Around 60 to 70% of her body was charred. The two immediately called the police and an ambulance while attempting to speak with Nandini, trying to get some details from her to contact her family. You might wonder why Nandini gave them Vaith Maran's number instead of someone else's. Perhaps she realized that she might not survive, and if she didn't give his number, he could escape without being caught. So she gave Vaith Maran's contact information. When Vaith Maran received the call, the first thing he did was claim that he wasn't in the area, but he was worried, concerned that he might have left some evidence behind. To check, he decided to return to the scene. By the time he arrived, the police and ambulance were already there. He pretended to help, assisting the paramedics in lifting Nandini into the ambulance. He behaved as if he was completely unaware of what had happened, acting concerned and sad, so no one would suspect him. As soon as Nandini was rushed to the hospital, as soon as they reached the hospital, Vaith Maran disappeared, and sadly, Nandini couldn't be saved. Her body was too badly burned, and she passed away at the hospital. The police immediately sprang into action, visiting Nandini's uncle's house, her office, and collecting evidence from various places. While investigating, They learned from a few people that Nandini had mentioned meeting her childhood friend, Vaith Maran, before she disappeared. This small piece of information was enough to turn the police's suspicion into certainty. Without wasting time, the police tracked down Vaith Maran. At first, he denied everything, but once they began interrogating him, Vaith Maran broke down and confessed everything. He admitted to brutally burning Nandini alive. He said it wasn't hard to execute his plan because Nandini trusted him blindly. She had willingly let him tie her hands and feet with chains and blindfold her, believing it was all part of a surprise. It made his task easy. He simply set her on fire. But the real question remains. Why did Vaith Maran do this to his childhood friend? Not just any friend. Nandini was the one who stood by him even when his own parents didn't. She supported him through his most challenging times. So why did he kill her so ruthlessly? Vaith Maran revealed that after he underwent his gender transition surgery, he confessed his love for Nandini. He proposed to her, but Nandini rejected him. She told him that they would always be best friends, but nothing more. Vaith Maran had changed his gender in hopes of marrying Nandini. He had liked her since childhood, and when he finally had the opportunity and resources, he transitioned into a man, believing he could make Nandini his. But when she rejected his proposal, it wounded his ego deeply. He couldn't bear the thought of seeing her with someone else. Every time he saw her with another man, jealousy consumed him. That's when he began plotting, waiting for the right moment. And when the opportunity came, he brutally ended her life. Wait, guys. Before you leave this video, listen to my final message. Please, whether you like or subscribe doesn't matter, but I urge you to share this video. Share it so no one else trusts someone so blindly that they end up becoming a victim of someone's hurt ego. This could save lives. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.